Hey everybody, welcome to verifiedinvesting.com. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here. In today's video, I want to dissect the chart of copper based on some key factors that are starting to emerge. So let's dive right into the charts. No delays, no BS, just charts here at Verified Investing. And what we see is copper had that big pop to the upside on the back of potential tariffs, and then the tariffs turned out to not be as bad and copper collapsed. Now, one of the things to take note of here is that on the daily chart, the collapse on copper was much bigger than the push to the upside on the back of the threats of extreme tariffs, right? And so right off the bat, that tells us something about weakness in copper. And really, you can extrapolate that out to understand what that could be telling us about the domestic US economy slowing as well as the global economy slowing. Now, since then, we've created what we would call a bear flag, right? And again, this is just simple textbook TA, right? Technical analysis, in that when you have a move to the downside like this, which again was this move, and you track sideways or slightly up, that again is textbook bear flag or in spirit of bear flag, and it generally resolves itself to the downside. Remember, everything in technical analysis is probability based, and so there's no 100%, right? I mean, a bear flag can fail, a bull flag can fail, a head and shoulders can fail, but it's all about what is most likely going to happen. Imagine walking into a casino and be like, hey, I can play any game in here and win 75% of the time. If you read the charts correctly, I'm a firm believer you can get to that point, which is pretty darn cool. All right, so we have the bear flag that gives us a downside bias in the near term. What does that tell us about a potential target? So let's take a look here. Well, one of the things is if you zoom out on the copper chart, look at how there's been this trend to the upside, right? In fact, if we go here and we use our parallel channel and we go back to the low of 2022, actually, you know what? Let's go even further back. Let's go back to the COVID lows and take a line and see what happens. Let's draw that through. And what we see is that you can connect this through multiple pivot points on the chart there. Okay, so again, if we zoom in here and keep that trend line, look at that. I mean, really right over to January 2025, then right over to here in April 2025, and even back to this level here in October 2023. Now, what this gives us is a firm basis for understanding where the bear flag could play out to and where it should find support. All right. So, again, bear flag, which favors the downside, where would be our short term target for copper? And the answer would be approximately at 428-ish, maybe 429. Again, somewhere in that vicinity. Currently, copper trading at $4.52. And by the way, remember, these videos, and I think this is so important, and I'm so proud of this too, is that these videos, you may not trade copper, you may not care about copper, but the technical analysis that I use in these videos can be utilized in crypto, in stocks, in all other commodities, in Forex, you name it, which makes it very useful, even if you're not a copper trader, right? And for me, I honestly don't trade copper much, but I use it as an indicator of the global health of the economy, right? Because again, copper is the lifeblood of the buildings, all the infrastructure, all of that stuff. All right, back to the charts we go. So we have our downside potential near-term target. Now what I want us to do here, folks, is take a line, take that parallel, all right, and I'm going to try to do this as best as I can here, and we want to drag that parallel up, and what we can see here is that, look at this, guys. So again, this is the stuff that literally makes me so excited, is that I just dragged the parallel up, and look, we get this point, we get this point, and then we get this high pivot, kind of appears here on extreme optimism, but basically right there, and then it reversed, right there, then it reversed, and then on the tariff craziness, look at how you kind of pulled back, held, but then broke back below. Okay, so needless to say, the reason why these type of parallels are important to see is because it validates our low level here for a target and kind of how important it is. Now I'm going to get rid of these because I want to show you guys something even cooler, right? So now let's take this a step further and drag the parallel up even more. Now we drag it up to this exact high, right? And what we see here is that all this high gives you these lows as well. See how this works? People that say, technical analysis and trend lines, and by the way, look right there too, right there too, and obviously this high. When they say, oh, it doesn't work. I mean, like, look at how do you explain that all these pivot points match up with a perfect parallel from this low here. I mean, to me, it's just mind blowing, right? Then we bring this up here to these highs, and look, right to that high. And again, you can see even right in there. Anyways, I just thought that was so cool to show right in that vicinity and kind of to understand what is going on. All right, so let's dive back in. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip over to the weekly chart. And again, we just want to take a look at the bigger time frames. And so I'm going to put this trend line back in from the COVID lows. And again, what I'm looking to do here is say, okay, let's take the methodology that I teach in the Winning Trader series a step further, right? That's my 18 to 20 hour course where I go over all this. So we have this level here, goes right through this pivot point. And this is the same trend line we had before. This is just the weekly chart, right? So essentially, this gives us our downside target of around like 428, 429, like I said. So let's say it comes down there. What are the odds that it breaks and goes even lower? So in general, it should get a small bounce, but you are making a bear flag just above it. So a small bounce, and then it could actually break to the downside. And one thing that has me thinking that way is that if we put numbers along all these points, right here, all right. How many hits would this be? And this, if it comes down, this would be your sixth hit. Now, the methodology that I teach is that the more times you hit a trend line, the weaker the trend line becomes, AKA, the more probable that it breaks through that line. So I do expect a small bounce at 428, 429, maybe, 10% or so at most. But then I actually think it comes down and breaks this line, which would be a major breakdown. And it would actually tell us that the economy, both domestically and globally, is probably going into something worse than a minor recession. It's probably a mid-level or greater recession if copper is going to break even lower. All right. And again, to explain it to those of you that are newbies here, here's number one. All right. That's the beginning point. Number two, the odds of breaking way less than 50%. It's very unlikely on the second hit you're going to break. Third hit, same thing, very unlikely. Fourth hit is a 50-50 break. So 50% chance it was going to break here. It didn't. It went up. The fifth hit is a 60-40, meaning that it favors a breakdown by 60%. But in this case, it didn't do it. And then this would be the sixth hit, which is a 70-30. So 70% chance that it breaks. If it gets a small bounce and then comes down and hits it a seventh time, that would be what we would refer to in the methodology as a time count. And the odds on a 7 count of breaking are 80%, meaning that it's about as close as you can get to a breakdown being, pretty much as close to a guarantee as we can get in technical analysis. I haven't found anything that's beyond 80%, frankly. 80% is like gold standard Hall of Fame type stuff. But again, the point being is that if this hits here, it's already a 70% chance of a break. Here, an 80%, at some point, this is going to break. And when it breaks, yes, you'll have little stopping points along these pivot points, but really you got to be thinking it's going at least down to like 315, and eventually it could be going down here. Look at this, guys. So if we do this one last point, you have basically a pivot low, raise it right there. So it goes right into this. That would be your ultimate, like that's a bad recession. Essentially, that would be your COVID lows, 2016 lows back there as well. But essentially, this would be like the Great Recession if it goes down there. Now, I'm not saying it's going there in the near term. I think it's important to respect it. How long would it take if it's going to get a bounce here, here, and all along here at these pivot lows? You could be literally talking 2 years out. But at 2 years out, if it does break, I'd be starting to get very concerned that we're heading down in this range. So suffice it to say, near-term bearish bias, but also, yes, bounces at those key levels I've shown, and especially at that first big upsloping ascending trend line. But things are not great on the chart of copper, especially if it breaks that longer-term trend line that goes back to COVID. I would be, again, looking at this and saying, okay, we're not on the verge of a bad recession by no means, right? I mean, literally, it's probably a year, 2 years out. But if I'm me as I am, or if I'm you guys, I'd start to be planning for something much worse, 1 to 2 years out, based on the chart of copper. All right, you guys are great. Thank you. By the way, your comments are just wonderful. Really amazing. I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. It drives me. Like literally, I woke up on a Sunday morning this morning. And I'm like, man, these guys, they comment such kind things. I've got to do another video. Like let's deep dive into something. And listen, I'm not saying you guys have to watch them all by no means, but I want to give you guys the education, right? Let's learn to fish together. I would consider myself a pretty solid fisherman at this point. But if I can bring you guys up to my level, I would love that. Even if you guys say, hey, I don't even want to use it, or you use other metrics, that's fine. At least I put it out there for the world to learn from. All right, you guys have a great one. Come visit us at verifiedinvesting.com. Take care.